If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, even after giving everything, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Now, let me tell you what really happened that week in Malibu. I never imagined that spending $14,000 on a luxury beach house would become the moment I finally saw who my daughter-in-law really was. My name is Margaret Chen. I'm 68 years old, and after selling my interior design firm in San Diego last year for just over $2 million, I wanted to create something special for my family. My son David, his wife Jessica, and my 2 grandchildren Tyler and Emma deserved a week of pure joy and relaxation. The Malibu property sat right on the Pacific Coast Highway with 5 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean, and an infinity pool that seemed to pour directly into the sea. I'd spent weeks planning every detail, from the stocked gourmet kitchen to the water sports equipment waiting for the kids. The rental cost me $14,100 for the week. What I overheard Jessica say on that first afternoon, calling me the old lady who should be stuck in a back room, shattered everything I thought I knew about my place in this family. If you've ever felt invisible despite your generosity, comment with your state below. The house was even more stunning than the photos suggested, with natural wood and soft whites creating a calming sanctuary. I'd specifically chosen the master suite for David and Jessica, complete with a private balcony overlooking the waves. The children would share one ocean view room, and I'd take the other so I could watch them play in the pool from my window each morning. 2 smaller rooms toward the back, though still beautiful with garden views and private patios, would remain empty. That was my plan anyway. The rental agreement sat in my purse, proof of my investment and planning. Rosa, the property manager, greeted us warmly at 11 that Saturday morning, handing over keys and walking us through the smart home systems. Tyler and Emma burst from David's car like fireworks, racing toward the beach access with pure childhood joy. David followed more slowly, helping with luggage, his face already more relaxed than I'd seen in months. Jessica emerged last, designer sunglasses hiding her expression, phone already pressed to her ear as she surveyed the property with a look I couldn't quite read but that sent a small warning through me. David started unpacking immediately while the kids explored every room, their excited shouts echoing off the high ceilings. I grabbed my suitcase and headed toward the ocean view guest room I'd mentally claimed, the one closest to the children's room. The space was perfect, decorated in soft blues with sailboat paintings, and a view that took my breath away. Jessica appeared in the hallway as I opened the door, her hand light on my arm, voice dripping with false sweetness. "Margaret, this is absolutely incredible. You really didn't have to spend so much money on all of us." For a moment I thought she might actually hug me, show real appreciation. Instead, she glanced toward the master suite and added, "Let me just make one quick call to my mom. Then we'll get the room situation figured out, okay?" The phrase, room situation, landed strangely in my chest, but I nodded and continued into my chosen space, assuming she just wanted to share our safe arrival with her parents back home. I began unpacking my carefully folded clothes into the dresser drawers, hanging my favorite linen dress in the closet for evening dinners. Through the window, I watched David setting up beach chairs while Tyler tested the pool temperature with cautious toes, Emma copying her big brother exactly. The scene was peaceful, exactly what I'd envisioned when booking this place months ago. My late husband Thomas would have loved it here by the ocean. He'd been gone 6 years now, and I still reached for him in moments like these, wanting to share the joy. I pulled out my phone to photograph the view for my sister Linda in Phoenix. That's when Jessica's voice drifted clearly through the partially open window, floating from the master suite next door. At first I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but her tone was completely different from the sweet voice she'd used with me moments before. I froze mid-motion, phone forgotten, every sense suddenly focused on the words coming through that window with crystal clarity. "Yes, Mom, we're here, and it's absolutely gorgeous," Jessica said, her voice sharp with excitement. There was a pause for her mother's response. Then Jessica laughed in a way I'd never heard before, harsh and conspiratorial. "I know, right? Margaret really outdid herself this time. The master suite is incredible, bigger than our entire upstairs at home. You and Dad are going to absolutely love it when you arrive Tuesday." My stomach dropped like a stone into dark water. Jessica's parents were coming? David had specifically told me this would be just immediate family for the week. I stood completely motionless, hand still gripping my phone, as Jessica continued talking to her mother. "Don't worry, I've got it all planned out perfectly. You and Dad obviously take the master suite. David and I will move to the big ocean view room next to the kids, and the old lady, we'll just stick her in one of those back rooms. She probably won't even mind, and honestly, she'll likely prefer the quiet away from all of us anyway, right?" The casual cruelty in those words hit me like a physical slap across the face. The old lady. Stick her in one of those back rooms. I felt my ears ringing, my hands starting to tremble so badly I nearly dropped my phone on the hardwood floor. Through the window, I could still see David with the children, completely unaware that his wife was planning to exile his mother to accommodate her parents in the house I'd paid $14,000 to rent for our family. The phrase kept replaying in my mind, each repetition driving the hurt deeper into my chest. Was this really how Jessica saw me? As some disposable piece of furniture to be shuffled around according to her convenience? I thought about all the Thursday afternoons I'd babysat so she could attend yoga classes and long lunches with friends. The $40,000 I'd given them 3 years ago for their house down payment. The countless family dinners I'd hosted, birthday parties I'd helped plan. The endless ways I'd tried to be supportive without being the stereotypical, intrusive mother-in-law everyone jokes about. I forced myself to breathe slowly and think clearly through the pain threatening to overwhelm my rational mind completely. Jessica was still talking, her voice continuing to drift through the window like poison gas seeping into my lungs. She paid for everything, so she probably thinks she gets to control all the room assignments, but this is our family vacation too, you know? We deserve the nice rooms with good views. Plus, you know how she is, Mom, always hovering around Tyler and Emma, trying to feed them candy when we're doing low carb. This way, with her tucked away in the back, we'll all have some actual breathing room and real family time without her constantly inserting herself into every single moment. Each word was a fresh cut. I heard her footsteps moving across the master bedroom, then the sound of a door closing as she apparently went deeper into the suite. The silence that followed felt suffocating, pressing down on my chest like a physical weight I couldn't lift. I looked around the beautiful room I'd chosen and felt something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't just hurt anymore or simple betrayal. This was clarity, sharp and cold and absolutely illuminating. For the first time in 12 years of trying to be the perfect mother-in-law, I saw my relationship with Jessica without any filters or hopeful denial. She didn't respect me. She didn't value me as a person. She tolerated me because I was useful, because I provided money and free childcare and made her life easier in countless ways. And she was perfectly comfortable manipulating my generosity while mocking me behind my back to her own mother. The realization was devastating and liberating in equal measure. I'd been playing a role in a script Jessica had written, and I'd never even realized it until this moment, standing in this beautiful room I was about to lose. I stood up and walked to the dresser, pulling my carefully unpacked clothes back out and placing them methodically into my suitcase. My movements were calm, deliberate, almost mechanical. Years of running a successful business had taught me that emotion was fine in private, but effective action required a clear head. Simply confronting Jessica would lead to tears and apologies that wouldn't change anything fundamental about our dynamic. David would be stuck in the middle, forced to choose between believing his mother or his wife, which wasn't fair to him. No, if I was going to address this situation, I needed to do it in a way that exposed the truth without me appearing to be the villain or the difficult mother-in-law. I needed leverage, documentation, and a plan that would make my point undeniably clear while maintaining my dignity throughout. I zipped my suitcase and sat back down, pulling out the printed floor plan I'd studied so carefully while planning this trip. My interior designer's brain, trained to solve complex spatial problems and create functional harmony, began working on a very different kind of project. By the time I heard David calling everyone to lunch 10 minutes later, I had the skeleton of a plan forming. I touched up my makeup, checked my reflection to ensure my face revealed nothing, and walked out to join my family by the pool with a smile plastered on. The lunch I'd prearranged was spread across the outdoor table, gourmet sandwiches and fresh salads delivered from a local restaurant exactly as ordered. Tyler chattered excitedly about fish he'd spotted from the deck, and Emma begged me to swim with her after eating, her little face full of trust and love. David kept thanking me, his hand warm on my shoulder, his eyes so much like his father's it physically hurt. And Jessica sat across from me in her expensive swimsuit, laughing at the kids' jokes, complimenting the food, playing her role perfectly. When she offered to refill my lemonade, I watched her performance with new eyes, seeing the calculation behind every kind gesture and smile. After lunch, David took the children down to explore the beach, while Jessica excused herself for a shower. I told everyone I needed to rest briefly, blamed the early morning drive, and retreated to my room. Instead of resting, I pulled out my phone and called my sister Linda, keeping my voice low as I explained everything I'd overheard through that window. Linda listened without interrupting, which was unusual for my normally talkative sister, and when I finished my story, her response was immediate and fierce. "That manipulative little snake, after everything you've done for them over the years? Margaret, you need to pack up and leave right now. Come home. Don't spend another minute in that house with her." But I shook my head, even though Linda couldn't see me. If I leave now, Jessica wins completely. She gets to tell everyone I was difficult and dramatic, that I ruined the family vacation by storming out over nothing. I'll be cast as the bad guy in this story. Linda was quiet for a moment. Then I heard the shift in her tone that meant her devious mind was fully engaged. "Okay, so what's your plan? Because I know that tone, sis. You've got something brewing in that brilliant head." I outlined my developing idea, still rough around the edges but gaining shape and clarity as I spoke the words aloud. Linda's suggestions sharpened it considerably, made it better, and by the time we hung up 20 minutes later, I felt powerful. My next call was to Michael Patterson, the lawyer who'd handled my business sale and served as my trusted advisor for over 15 years. It was Saturday afternoon, but Michael had always told me to call any time for anything important. He answered on the fourth ring, slightly out of breath. "Margaret, everything okay?" I explained that I needed legal advice on a family matter, nothing criminal or urgent, but I wanted to ensure I stayed on the right side of every line. Michael listened carefully, asked several clarifying questions about the rental agreement and my rights as the sole signer, then gave me the guidance I desperately needed. "What you're describing is completely legal. It's your money, your contract, your decision. Document everything in writing, which it sounds like you're already planning to do. If you want, I can draft something formal on Monday." I told him that might become necessary and thanked him profusely. My third call was to Rosa, the property manager who'd been so helpful and professional during the entire booking process. She answered with professional warmth, asking if everything was satisfactory with the house and our arrival. "Rosa, everything is absolutely beautiful," I told her carefully. "But I have an unusual situation and I need your help with something specific. I'm willing to compensate you fairly for your time and discretion." I explained what I'd overheard and what I needed her assistance with going forward. There was a long pause, and I worried I'd overstepped by asking her to get involved in a messy family dispute. Then Rosa sighed, and her voice was softer and more personal when she spoke again. "Mrs. Chen, I manage luxury properties for a living, and you would not believe the entitled behavior I see constantly from people who aren't even paying the bills. Just last month, I had guests try to kick the actual renter out of the master bedroom because they decided they deserved it more based on nothing. What you're asking is completely within your rights as the person who signed the agreement and paid in full. I'll help you, and you don't need to pay me anything extra whatsoever. Consider it my contribution to justice." I spent the rest of Saturday afternoon and evening playing the same role Jessica had been perfecting all day. The pleasant, agreeable family member who wanted nothing but everyone's happiness. I swam with Emma, building elaborate floats and laughing at her jokes. I helped Tyler collect interesting shells, admiring each one with genuine interest. I complimented the chicken David grilled for dinner and set the table without being asked to help. When Jessica suggested we all watch a movie together after the kids were bathed, I agreed enthusiastically and even let her choose the film, some romantic comedy I'd normally never pick. David kept looking at me with such genuine affection and gratitude, completely unaware of what his wife had said or what I was carefully planning. When the kids were finally asleep and David was loading the dishwasher, Jessica settled onto the couch beside me with her wine, her performance still absolutely flawless. "Margaret, I just want you to know how much this week means to all of us. You're so generous. We're really lucky to have you in our lives. Sunday morning, I woke before everyone else and took my coffee out to watch the sunrise, paint the ocean in shades of gold and pink. My phone buzzed with a text from Linda. Thinking of you. Stay strong. Channel your inner badass businesswoman. Then a message from Rosa. All confirmed. Monday evening, 7 p.m. I'll bring everything we discussed. I breathed in the salt air and felt a strange calm settle over me. In my design career, I'd learned that the best solutions weren't about domination or revenge. They were about clarity, truth, and revealing what was already there, but hidden from view. What I was planning wasn't cruel or manipulative. I was simply going to make the truth visible in a way that couldn't be denied or explained away. When David came out at 7 with his own coffee, I asked him casually, "Are Jessica's parents planning to visit this week? I thought I heard her mention something about them yesterday." David looked surprised and slightly uncomfortable, which confirmed my suspicion immediately. "Oh yeah, I meant to tell you about that earlier," David said, not quite meeting my eyes directly. "Jessica invited them kind of last minute. They're driving down Tuesday and staying through Friday morning. Is that okay? There's plenty of room in this big house, right?" The fact that he was asking my permission after they'd already been invited and were already planning to drive here told me everything I needed to know about the family dynamics at play. I kept my voice light and unconcerned, hiding the steel underneath. "Of course it's okay, sweetheart. The more the merrier, right? How long will they be staying?" David relaxed visibly, clearly relieved I wasn't making this difficult or causing problems. "Just Tuesday night through Friday morning, so 3 nights total. Jessica thought it would be nice since we're all already here and the house is so spacious." I nodded, as if this made perfect sense, as if I hadn't heard his wife planning to exile me to a back room. "That sounds lovely. I look forward to seeing Frank and Carol again." Monday was dedicated to setting up what I privately thought of as my chess pieces on the board. I told the family I wanted to explore the local area and do some shopping, giving myself freedom to move around without questions. My first stop was a FedEx printing center where I made multiple copies of the rental agreement, which I'd saved as a PDF in my email. The agreement clearly showed my name as the sole renter, my credit card as the payment method, and the total cost, $14,100 paid in full 6 weeks ago. I also printed the email chain between Rosa and me, showing the booking date and our discussions about the property layout. Everything was organized into neat folders with tabs and labels, professional and undeniable. My years managing design contracts meant I knew exactly how to present information for maximum clarity and impact. Next, I visited a notary at a UPS store and had several documents notarized, including a brief statement I'd written describing the phone conversation I'd overheard, with exact quotes and precise timestamps. My final stop was a high-end stationery store where I purchased a leather journal and several note cards with matching envelopes. I sat in my car in the parking lot and wrote out 4 cards carefully. 1 addressed to David, 1 to Tyler and Emma together, 1 to my sister Linda, and 1 for myself as a reminder of my own worth and strength. I sealed 3 of them and left 1 open for potential last-minute additions. Then I drove back to the beach house, arriving around 3 to find everyone relaxed and happy at the pool. Jessica was on her phone again, but quickly hung up when she saw me pulling up, her smile wide and automatic. "Margaret, we were wondering where you'd gone." I held up my shopping bags containing my carefully chosen purchases. Just exploring the area, I found a wonderful bookstore and completely lost track of time. Emma ran up to show me a perfect sand dollar she'd found, and I let myself sink into the genuine love I felt for my grandchildren, using it to fuel what was coming in the next few days. After lunch, David took the kids down to explore tide pools and sea caves, giving Jessica and me space. Around 10 o'clock that evening, as we were all winding down for bed, Jessica found me on the deck looking at stars. "Margaret, about the room situation," she began carefully. "With my parents coming tomorrow, I've been thinking that maybe you'd be more comfortable in one of the back rooms. They're actually very nice, and they're quieter, away from all the noise the kids make." She said it sweetly, as if she were genuinely concerned about my comfort rather than executing the plan I'd overheard. I let a few seconds of silence hang between us, watching her fidget slightly under my steady gaze. "Which back room were you thinking?" I asked, my voice completely neutral. Jessica's relief was visible and almost amusing. Either one, really, they're both lovely. Whichever you prefer. I nodded slowly, as if considering this seriously. Let me think about it overnight. What time are your parents arriving? She checked her phone. Around 2 tomorrow afternoon. I smiled. Perfect. Tuesday morning arrived with fog that burned off by 9, revealing another flawless California day. I could feel anticipation building in my chest. Not anxiety, but strange excitement mixed with determination. At exactly 2:15, David returned with Jessica's parents, Frank and Carol Morrison. I'd met them perhaps 6 times over the years at various family events, and they'd always been pleasant if somewhat distant. Frank was a retired insurance adjuster, practical and straightforward. Carol had worked in real estate before retiring when grandchildren arrived. They were in their early 70s, well-preserved and comfortably middle class. When they turned to greet me after hugging Jessica, the warmth noticeably cooled several degrees. "Margaret, how nice to see you," Carol said, her hug brief and perfunctory. Frank nodded and immediately turned to examine the house. "This is quite a place. Must have cost a pretty penny." Before I could respond, Jessica had already hooked her arm through her mother's. "Come on, let me show you the master suite. It's incredible." They disappeared down the hall, leaving me with David, Frank, and the children. Within 10 minutes, everyone was gathered in the living room. Tyler and Emma sat on the floor, sensing adult tension. Frank and Carol took the couch, looking around with apparent satisfaction. David stood behind them, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. Jessica positioned herself next to her parents, literally and figuratively aligned with them. I remained standing near the windows with the ocean behind me, backlit like I was on a stage. "So," David began awkwardly, "we just need to figure out sleeping arrangements now that Frank and Carol are here." He looked at me expectantly, clearly waiting for me to volunteer for the back room. I smiled at everyone. "Before we decide anything, I'd like to make sure everyone understands how the rental agreement works, since there seems to be some confusion." The temperature dropped noticeably. Jessica's expression flickered. "Confusion? There's no confusion, Margaret. We just need to make sure everyone fits comfortably." I pulled out my phone and opened the rental agreement photos. The house was rented under my name exclusively, paid for entirely by me, $14,100 for the week. I kept my voice level and factual. The original plan was that David and Jessica would have the master suite. The kids would share an ocean view room, and I would take the other ocean view room. The 2 back rooms would remain empty. Carol shifted uncomfortably. Frank's eyebrows rose. David looked confused. Jessica's face began to flush. "We know you paid for it, Margaret," Jessica said, her voice taking on an edge. "And we're all very grateful. But now that my parents are here, we need to redistribute rooms." I was thinking my parents could have the master, David and I take the ocean view room next to the kids, and you could take one of the back rooms. They're very nice. She said it as if it were perfectly reasonable. "I appreciate your suggestion, Jessica," I said, and my voice was steel, wrapped in silk. "But I'm not moving to a back room in a house I paid for to accommodate guests I didn't invite and wasn't consulted about." The silence was absolute. Frank's mouth fell open. Carol looked at Jessica, as if waiting for her daughter to fix this. David stared at me like I'd started speaking a foreign language. Emma whispered to Tyler, "Is Grandma mad?" Jessica's face went through a remarkable transformation. "Margaret, that's completely unreasonable," she said, her voice rising. "They drove all the way here. You can't seriously expect my parents to sleep in the back rooms like second-class citizens." The projection was breathtaking. "Jessica, those back rooms have California king beds, marble bathrooms, and French doors to private patios. They're hardly substandard. But if that's not acceptable, there's a hotel 3 miles up the highway. The Pacific View Inn has availability." I pulled out a folder and handed it to David. "This is the rental agreement. You'll see I'm listed as the sole renter, which means legally and practically I have final say on room assignments." David took the folder with shaking hands. Jessica moved toward me, her expression between pleading and furious. "You're going to humiliate my parents over a bedroom?" I met her eyes without flinching. "I'm going to maintain the room arrangement I planned and paid for. If you'd consulted me before inviting your parents, we could have discussed options. But you didn't. You just assumed I'd move wherever you wanted, like furniture." The accusation hung in the air. Carol stood up. "Jessica, maybe we should just go to a hotel. This is very uncomfortable." Frank was already on his phone researching hotels. David looked between his wife and his mother, clearly torn. "Wait, everyone just calm down," he said. "Let's think rationally. Mom, I understand you paid, but can't we all just be flexible? It's only 3 nights." And there it was, the expectation that I would be the one to compromise. I turned to my son. "David, I love you. I wanted this week to be special for all of us. But I will not be treated as an afterthought in a vacation I organized and funded. If Jessica had asked me respectfully, I would have helped find a solution. Instead, I overheard her on the phone Saturday, calling me the old lady and saying I should be stuck in a back room." David's face went pale. "What? Mom? That can't be." Jessica's face drained of all color. "I didn't say that," she stammered weakly. "I pulled out another document. I didn't record you because that would be wrong. But I wrote down exactly what you said immediately afterward, and I had it notarized yesterday." I handed David the document. He read it, hands trembling, eyes widening with horror. The document was my sworn statement, time-stamped Saturday at 2:45 p.m., including direct quotes. David looked up at Jessica, waiting for her to deny it. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. I was venting to my mother. I was frustrated. I didn't think anyone would hear, but the damage was done. Tyler had tears in his eyes. Emma looked scared. "Mommy, why did you call Grandma Margaret the old lady? That's mean." Jessica knelt down, reaching for her daughter, but Emma pulled back. "Honey, it was just a misunderstanding." Even a 7-year-old could sense the lie. David set the folder down carefully. "Jessica, we need to talk. Privately. Now." His voice was colder than I'd ever heard. Jessica followed him out to the deck. Through the glass doors, I could see her gesturing frantically, while David stood with his arms crossed. Carol approached me. "Margaret, I'm sure Jessica didn't mean to hurt you. She's been stressed. It was automatic mother protection, and I understood even as I rejected it. Carol, stress doesn't excuse disrespect. I hope you'll be comfortable in one of the back rooms. They truly are lovely." Frank cleared his throat. "We should probably just head to that hotel. This feels like a family matter." Part of me wanted to insist they stay, but I recognized they were casualties in Jessica's game. "That's your choice, Frank. I'm sorry you drove all this way for this." Carol's eyes watered. She nodded slowly. David and Jessica returned, both looking shaken. David addressed the room. "Frank, Carol, I think it's best if you stay at the hotel tonight. Let's give everyone space, and we can have dinner tomorrow if everyone's calmer." It was diplomatic. Frank nodded, already heading for the door. Carol hugged Jessica, whispered something, then stopped in front of me. "Margaret, I'm sorry this happened." After they left, it was just Jessica, the kids, and me. Jessica turned to me, expression mixing fury and humiliation. "I hope you're satisfied. You've just ruined this entire vacation and made my parents feel unwelcome. Over what? Bedroom assignments?" I picked up my documents. "No, Jessica. You ruined it when you decided to disrespect me and manipulate room arrangements without asking. I simply refused to accept that treatment." She laughed bitterly. "You know what your problem is? You think because you have money, you can control everyone." The accusation stung because it contained a grain of distorted truth. "I bought this house to create happy memories," I said slowly, my voice cracking. "I wanted my grandchildren to have a week they'd remember forever. And you're right, they will remember it. But not the way I hoped." Emma started crying. Tyler stood up. "Why is everyone fighting?" His simple question cut through everything. I knelt down and opened my arms. Both kids came to me. Jessica watched, her expression unreadable. David returned, saw his children clinging to me while his wife stood isolated, and his face crumpled. "Kids, go to the beach. Stay where I can see you." Once they were outside, David turned to both of us. "This ends now. We're family. We're going to figure this out." I stood up. "David, I love you. But you need to understand something. I've spent 12 years bending over backward for Jessica. I helped with your house down payment, $40,000. I babysit weekly. I'm there for every crisis. And your wife thinks so little of me that she calls me the old lady and plans to hide me away. She didn't ask. She assumed I'd accept whatever she decided. David turned to Jessica. Is that true? Did you really say those things? Jessica's face flushed. I was venting. Your mom is always so involved in everything. I wanted my parents to feel valued for once. She has the best relationship with you. She's the favorite grandparent. She has all the money. I wanted 1 week where my family came first. The admission revealed years of resentment. David ran his hands through his hair. Mom, you keep your room. Jessica and I stay in the master. Kids stay where they are. Frank and Carol at the hotel. Tomorrow we have a real conversation about boundaries and respect. It was reasonable, but I knew something fundamental had broken. That evening was painful. David grilled burgers, but nobody had appetite. The kids were subdued. Jessica didn't speak to me. After dinner, I excused myself and returned to my room, pulling out the journal I'd purchased. I began to write about what I'd learned, about boundaries, about self-worth, about how love without respect is just obligation. Wednesday morning, David asked if we could walk on the beach. Just us. We walked in silence for several minutes. Finally, David stopped. Mom, why didn't you tell me what you overheard Saturday? Why let it build until yesterday? It was fair. Because if I'd told you immediately, you'd be put in the middle, forced to choose. I didn't want that burden on you. I wanted Jessica to reveal herself on her own terms. David flinched. She told me last night she's felt in your shadow for years. That Tyler and Emma love you more than her parents. That I confide in you more than in her. That your money makes her feel powerless. I let the words settle. I've tried to be supportive without being controlling. But I won't apologize for having a close relationship with you or being financially stable. David nodded slowly. I know. I told her that. We talked for hours. She knows she was wrong, but she's embarrassed and doesn't know how to apologize. I could hear the unspoken plea. What do you want me to do, David? He took my hand. I want you to be yourself, but I also want my family to stay together. Is there any way we can get past this? I squeezed his hand. I'll always love you and be here for you. But my relationship with Jessica has changed. She showed me who she really is, and I can't unsee that. We can be civil, coexist, but the easy trust, that's gone. David's eyes filled with tears. He nodded. I understand. I hope with time, maybe you can both find a way forward. We walked back slowly. The rest of Wednesday passed in careful civility. Jessica and I moved around each other like dancers avoiding collision. That evening, Frank and Carol joined us for dinner at a seafood restaurant. The meal was polite, but strained. Thursday morning brought my final reveal. Rosa arrived at 10 as arranged, carrying her portfolio, wearing business attire. I met her at the door. Mrs. Chen, everything is ready as you requested, Rosa said quietly. Jessica emerged, saw Rosa, and her expression shifted to concern. Rosa, hi, is there a problem? Rosa smiled professionally. Everything is fine. I'm here to meet with Mrs. Chen about contract finalization. David came out looking confused. Contract details? I gestured to the dining table. Let's all sit. This affects everyone. The three sat while I remained standing. I want to start by saying everything I'm about to propose is optional. I pulled out the first document. This is a complete accounting of every financial gift I've given your family over 12 years. The $40,000 house down payment, $25,000 in loans never repaid, weekly childcare worth approximately $31,000 at market rate, various gifts totaling $18,000. The total is $114,000. I laid out each receipt, each check. David's face went pale. Jessica's mouth opened. I never mentioned these amounts because I thought of them as gifts given freely. But being called the old lady has made me reconsider. I pulled out the second document. This is a family financial agreement. It states all past gifts remain gifts with no repayment expected. But going forward, any assistance will be formalized as a loan with clear terms, or it won't happen. Additionally, I'm establishing a trust for Tyler and Emma, funded with $500,000. They'll receive it at 25. It's managed by a third party. Neither you nor Jessica will have access. David stood abruptly. Mom, we never asked you to track every dollar. His voice carried hurt. I know, But the assumption that my generosity is infinite without needing basic respect is the problem. This protects both of us. Jessica found her voice. This is blackmail. I shook my head. No. Blackmail would be demanding repayment if you don't behave. I'm doing the opposite. I'm releasing you from obligation while clarifying that future generosity requires mutual respect. Rosa spoke up. I'm here as an impartial witness. This kind of clarity is actually healthy for families. David sat back down, reading the documents. The agreement was thorough but fair. There's one more thing, I said. Inside this envelope is a check for $20,000 made out to Frank and Carol Morrison. Jessica's head snapped up. What? Why? I handed her the envelope. Because part of this stemmed from you feeling your parents don't get the same treatment. This check is for them to use however they choose, completely independent of me. It acknowledges that your desire for them to feel valued wasn't wrong, even though your method was hurtful. Jessica stared at the check. David looked at me with awe. Mom, you don't have to prove anything. But I shook my head. I'm not proving anything. I'm drawing boundaries while acknowledging a legitimate concern. Rosa stood, notarizing the documents. After she left, the three of us sat in heavy silence. Finally, Jessica looked up. I don't understand you. You document everything I did wrong, set up boundaries, then write a huge check for my parents. What are you trying to accomplish? It was honest. I'm trying to create a relationship where I can be generous without being taken for granted, where everyone knows exactly where they stand. I'm 68. I don't have time for games or pretense. This is me being honest about what I need to stay connected to this family healthily. David reached across, taking both our hands. I think this is fair. It's different, but it's fair. Jessica pulled her hand back gently, needing space. Can I have time to process this? She asked, and I nodded. She took the check and walked out to the deck, pulling out her phone. I assumed she was calling Carol. David and I sat together in the dining room, morning light streaming through windows. Dad would be proud of you, David said suddenly, for standing up for yourself. He always said you were stronger than you gave yourself credit for. The mention of Thomas brought tears. Your father would have told me to do this years ago. He never liked how I bent backward to keep peace with Jessica. David smiled sadly. He was usually right. We sat quietly, not needing words, just being present as mother and son. Outside, I could hear Jessica's voice rising and falling. About 20 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Carol, voice shaky. Margaret, Jessica told me about the check. I don't know what to say. It's incredibly generous, and I'm not sure we can accept it. I appreciated her honesty. Carol, please accept it. It's not a bribe. It's acknowledging you deserve to feel valued. Use it for something joyful. There was a long pause. Then Carol said something surprising. Margaret, I've always felt intimidated by you. You're so successful, so capable, so close to David. I think Jessica inherited some of that intimidation, and maybe that's where her resentment came from. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. I never meant to be intimidating, I told her. I just tried to be myself. Carol laughed softly. That's exactly what makes you intimidating. You're unapologetically yourself. People like Jessica and me spend so much energy trying to please everyone that someone who doesn't feels threatening. It was insight I filed away to process later. We talked for a few more minutes about their European river cruise dreams. By the time we hung up, I felt like a small bridge was being built. Thursday afternoon passed more peacefully than expected. Around 4, Jessica came to where I was sitting. Can we talk? She asked, voice stripped of pretense. I set down my book and nodded. She sat, and for a long moment we just looked at each other. I'm sorry, she finally said, and this time the words carried real weight. I'm sorry for what I said, for how I've treated you, for not appreciating everything you've done. I've been jealous and resentful, and I took it out on you instead of dealing with my own issues. It was better than I'd expected, more self-aware. Thank you. I accept your apology, but you need to understand that sorry doesn't erase what happened or immediately restore trust. It's going to take time. She nodded, tears streaming. I know. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to try to earn it back. I talked to my mom for over an hour, and she helped me see how badly I've been behaving for years. It was real progress. Then let's start from here, I said. New boundaries, clear expectations, honest communication. We may never have the relationship I hoped for, but we can build something real based on respect. She reached out tentatively and squeezed my hand, and I squeezed back. Friday brought our final full day, and it was lighter in every way. The weather cleared to brilliant sunshine, and the emotional atmosphere felt breathable again. David suggested spending the day at the beach together, creating at least some good memories from this complicated week. Frank and Carol joined us mid-morning, and for the first time interactions felt almost natural. Jessica was quieter, less performative, and I appreciated the authenticity. We spent hours in the sun, the kids burying Frank in sand and decorating him with seaweed, while Carol and I actually talked about our lives in ways we never had before. Tyler and Emma seemed to sense the tension had eased, and they relaxed back into their natural exuberance. Watching them play, I thought about the trust fund, the security that would give them options and freedom someday. That was my real legacy, not the confrontations or dramatic boundary setting, but the foundation for the next generation. As the sun descended Friday afternoon, painting the sky orange and pink, I felt bittersweet satisfaction. This week hadn't been what I planned, but it had been necessary. The rupture had been painful but productive, exposing truths that needed addressing. When David called us together for dinner, he raised his glass. To family, in all its complicated glory, to hard conversations and second chances, and to my mother, for teaching us that love requires respect. We clinked glasses, and in that moment, I felt genuine hope. Saturday morning brought packing and goodbyes. Frank and Carol came to help load cars. Rosa arrived for the final walkthrough, checking for damage. She pulled me aside. "Mrs. Chen, I hope this week ended better than it started." I smiled. "It ended differently, which is sometimes more important than better. Thank you for helping me stand up for myself." Rosa hugged me briefly. "You deserved respect in your own rental. I'm glad you demanded it." After Rosa left, I did one final walk through alone. The master suite where Jessica made her call. The ocean view room I'd fought to keep. The back rooms that had become symbols. Each space held memories now, not all happy, but all important. Standing in the living room where I'd confronted everyone, I felt pride. I hadn't been cruel. I'd simply refused to be diminished. The drive back to San Diego was quiet and contemplative. I'd chosen to drive alone, needing space to process everything. As I navigated the Pacific Coast Highway with the ocean on my left, I called Linda for a final debrief. "It's done," I told her. "It's over, and I survived." Linda wanted every detail, and I gave her the full story. "So did Jessica actually change, or is she just scared?" Linda asked with skepticism. "I think both can be true," I said slowly. "She's scared, but this week also forced her to confront things she'd been avoiding. Whether it sticks, only time will tell." Linda hummed thoughtfully. "Well, at least you stood up for yourself. You can't control whether she becomes better, but you can control what you accept. That's what matters." My sister was right, as usual. The rest of the drive passed with music and coffee stops, and by the time I pulled into my driveway late Saturday afternoon, I felt ready to be home. The following weeks were an exercise in cautious rebuilding. Jessica texted me every few days, nothing deep, just small updates about the kids or photos. I responded with warmth, but maintained the distance I needed. David called twice weekly, our conversations covering everything, but carefully avoiding the beach house unless one of us raised it. 3 weeks after we returned, Jessica asked if I'd like to come for Thursday dinner instead of babysitting, a subtle shift I appreciated. When I arrived, she'd cooked my favorite meal, chicken piccata with roasted vegetables, and the effort was obvious. We ate together, conversation flowing more naturally than it had in months. After dinner, Jessica asked if we could talk privately. We sat on their back patio while David supervised homework. "I've been seeing a therapist," Jessica told me, and I was genuinely surprised. I realized that week in Malibu that I had issues I'd been ignoring. Jealousy, insecurity, resentment. I'm working through them. I appreciated her honesty more than any apology. "That's really brave, Jessica. How's it going?" She shrugged. "It's hard, but necessary. My therapist helped me understand that I was competing with you for David's attention instead of recognizing that his love isn't finite. There's room for both of us. Over the next 2 months, our relationship slowly transformed. We were more honest, less performative. Jessica admitted things that bothered her instead of letting them fester, and I did the same. When she asked if I could watch the kids an extra day, I said no because I had plans. And the world didn't end. We were learning to respect boundaries. David noticed the change and commented during lunch. You and Jessica seem different together. Better somehow, even though the beach house was hard. I considered how to explain. We're more real now. Before, we were both playing roles. She was the perfect daughter-in-law. I was the endlessly accommodating mother-in-law. Neither of those people existed. Now we're just ourselves, with all our flaws and boundaries visible. It's messier, but more genuine. David nodded slowly. So, the conflict actually improved things? He sounded hopeful. Sometimes things have to break before they can be rebuilt stronger, but only if everyone's willing to do the work. The trust fund I'd established for Tyler and Emma became something I monitored quarterly, watching it grow with investments and compound interest. I'd worked with Michael Patterson to ensure the trust was ironclad, that the money would be there regardless of what happened with family relationships. It gave me deep satisfaction knowing that when my grandchildren reached 25, they'd have options, freedom, and a financial cushion. I thought about my own early struggles building a business from nothing, and I was grateful I could spare them some of that anxiety. One evening in early September, about 3 months after the beach house incident, I received a text from Carol Morrison. Frank and I are planning our vacation with your generous gift. We're thinking of a European river cruise next spring. Would you like to see the itinerary? The casual warmth was unexpected and welcome. I responded enthusiastically, and over the following weeks, Carol and I exchanged messages about their travel plans with an ease we'd never had before. The check I'd written had somehow become a genuine bridge. Frank even called me once to ask my opinion on travel insurance, and we had a surprisingly pleasant conversation about European river cruises and the best time to visit Vienna. I realized my gesture, intended to address Jessica's legitimate concern about her parents feeling undervalued, had actually accomplished what I'd hoped. Sometimes the solution to family conflict isn't choosing sides, but expanding the circle of care. In October, Tyler's 11th birthday arrived, and Jessica invited me to help plan the party. We sat at her kitchen table with notebooks and Pinterest boards, discussing themes like actual collaborators. I was thinking about the beach house, Jessica said suddenly. About how I almost ruined Tyler's memories with my behavior. He still talks about the seal he saw and the sandcastle he built with Grandpa Frank, and I'm grateful those are his primary memories instead of the adults fighting. I set down my pen. You didn't ruin his memories, Jessica. Kids are resilient, and we all worked hard to make the rest of the week better once everything was out in the open. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. You could have just left, you know. You could have packed up and gone home and let me deal with the fallout. Why didn't you? It was a question I'd asked myself many times. Because leaving would have been letting you win by default, and more importantly, it would have taught my grandchildren the wrong lesson, that when things get hard, you run away. I wanted them to see that adults can have conflict and work through it, that boundaries can coexist with love, that respect isn't optional even in family relationships. Jessica nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I'm really glad you stayed, and I'm glad you called me out. I needed it, even though it was humiliating. We went back to planning the birthday party, but something had deepened again between us. Tyler's party was chaotic and joyful, with 12 kids running through the house, playing elaborate games, and consuming alarming amounts of pizza and cake. I watched Jessica manage the chaos with patience and genuine humor, and I found myself actually liking her in a way I'm not sure I had before. When we'd first met 12 years ago, I'd been so focused on David's happiness and on performing the role of good mother-in-law that I'd never really looked at Jessica as her own complete person. Now, stripped of our pretenses and having survived the fire together, I could see her clearly. She was flawed and still working through issues, yes, but also genuinely trying to grow and be better. That took real courage. After the party, as we cleaned up wrapping paper and stray balloons, Jessica asked if I'd like to stay for a quiet adult dinner. Nothing fancy, just leftovers and real conversation. I accepted, and that evening felt like a turning point. The four of us sat around their dining table, tired but content, sharing stories from the party and laughing at Tyler's dramatic reactions to his gifts. David reached under the table and squeezed my hand at one point, and I knew he was thinking about how different this scene would have been if I'd handled the beach house confrontation differently. November brought Thanksgiving planning, and for the first time in years, Jessica actually asked what I wanted, rather than just assuming. "I'd like to host at my house," I told her. "But I want it to be a true potluck where everyone contributes something meaningful. Not because I can't afford it all, but because I want it to feel collaborative and shared." Jessica immediately agreed and suggested she'd make her famous sweet potato casserole. We worked out a menu together, dividing dishes among everyone. The Thanksgiving meal itself was warm and genuine, filled with laughter and honest conversation. Linda pulled me aside during dessert and whispered, "I never thought I'd see you and Jessica laughing together like old friends. You've really transformed this relationship." But I shook my head. We transformed it together. It took everyone being willing to change, not just one person. As I looked around my dining room at this imperfect, complicated, beautiful family, I felt grateful in a way that went deeper than holiday sentiment. We'd been tested, we'd almost broken, and we'd chosen to rebuild with honesty. That was worth celebrating. After everyone left, I pulled out the journal I'd started in Malibu and added a new entry documenting my gratitude. December arrived with its usual rush, but this year felt fundamentally different. Jessica and I went Christmas shopping together one Saturday, just the two of us. And as we wandered through stores looking for perfect gifts, she asked me about my business journey. "I've always been curious about how you built your design firm from nothing, but I felt weird asking because it seemed like you were so successful, and I was just a marketing coordinator going nowhere." I shared stories from my early days that I rarely told anyone, the mistakes that almost bankrupted me, the clients who nearly destroyed my confidence, the moments of profound doubt when I wanted to quit. Jessica listened intently, asking intelligent questions, and I realized she had a sharp business mind I'd never appreciated because I'd never bothered to really ask about her work. "Have you ever thought about starting your own marketing consultancy?" I asked her. "You clearly have the skills, and with the kids in school full-time now, you'd have the time." Her face lit up with excitement I'd rarely seen. "I've thought about it constantly, but David worries about the risk, and my parents think I should stick with the stable job." I stopped walking and turned to face her directly in the middle of a crowded mall corridor. "Jessica, I built a $2 million business starting with nothing but talent and determination. If you want to start your own consultancy, I'll help you. Not necessarily with money unless you need capital, but with advice, connections, and expertise. But only if you truly want it." She hugged me then, right there in the mall with shoppers flowing around us, and whispered, "I want it. I really, really want it." Something had come full circle. The conflict that started with financial power dynamics was transforming into financial empowerment. Over the next several weeks, Jessica and I met regularly to discuss her potential business. I connected her with lawyers, accountants, and former clients who might need marketing services. I shared my business plan template and helped her craft her own. David was surprised but supportive, especially when he saw how excited Jessica was about the prospect. By mid-January, Jessica Turner Marketing Consultancy was officially registered, and she'd already landed her first client through a connection I'd made. I watched her transform from someone who resented my success into someone building her own, and I felt pride that had nothing to do with my role. When she landed her second client in early February and called me screaming with excitement, I laughed and celebrated with her genuinely. David told me later that Jessica had started calling me her mentor, and the word made me unexpectedly emotional. A mentor wasn't someone you resented. A mentor was someone you respected and learned from. We'd come so far from the old lady in the back room. We'd become something better, something real, something built on mutual respect rather than obligation. On a rainy Saturday in late February, almost exactly a year after the beach house incident, I received a text from Jessica asking if I could meet her for coffee because she had something important to show me. She sounded serious enough that I worried something might be wrong. We met at our favorite local cafe, ordered our usual drinks, and settled into a quiet corner booth. Jessica pulled out a folder, and I felt a flutter of anxiety. Memories of my own documents from Malibu flashing through my mind. "I've been working on something for several months," Jessica began, opening the folder carefully. "And I wanted to show you before I showed David or anyone else, because it's really about us." Inside the folder was a beautifully designed scrapbook that took my breath away. As I flipped slowly through the pages, I realized it was documenting our entire year since Malibu. Photos from Tyler's birthday party, Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas morning, and dozens of other family moments. But interspersed with the photos were handwritten notes from Jessica, honest reflections on what she'd learned, apologies that went deeper than anything she'd said aloud, expressions of gratitude for my patience. The final page had a single sentence in elegant calligraphy. "Thank you for teaching me that respect is the foundation of real family." I looked up at Jessica through tears, unable to speak. "This is beautiful," I finally managed. "But you didn't need to do this." She shook her head firmly. "Yes, I did, because I needed to acknowledge in a permanent way everything that happened and everything we've built since. I wanted you to have something tangible that shows my commitment to being better, to respecting you not just now when things are good, but always." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "That week in Malibu, I was at my worst. I was petty, disrespectful, and cruel. And instead of writing me off, you set boundaries and gave me space to grow into them. We sat in that cafe for over 2 hours, drinking coffee and talking about everything from her business to my retirement plans to the kids' futures. It was the kind of deep conversation we should have been having all along. When we finally left, Jessica hugged me longer than usual. "I know the beach house week was awful for you, but I think it saved our relationship. If you hadn't confronted me, I'd still be resenting you, and you'd still be letting me. We'd both be miserable, just better at hiding it." I hugged her back. "Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept unloving treatment. It forces everyone to be honest." March brought another unexpected full-circle moment. David called me on a Tuesday evening, excitement clear in his voice. "Mom, Jessica and I have been talking, and we want to plan another family vacation for this summer. Nothing as elaborate as last year, just a week at a beach house. But this time, we want to pay for everything and do all the planning. We'd love for you to come, obviously, but only if you're comfortable." I was touched by the invitation and the careful way David framed it. "Where are you thinking?" I asked. "Actually, we found a house in Malibu, not the same one but nearby. Jessica thought it would be symbolic, taking the same trip but doing it right this time." I smiled into the phone, appreciating Jessica's instinct for symbolism. "I'd absolutely love to come. Thank you for inviting me." Over the following weeks, Jessica kept me updated on planning, asking my opinion, but making clear she and David were handling everything. When they sent me the final itinerary, I noticed they'd assigned rooms thoughtfully. David and Jessica in the master, kids sharing one room, me in a beautiful ocean view room, and 2 additional rooms left available. No one was being relegated to the back. Everyone was valued and accommodated. It was exactly what I'd hoped for, but never demanded. They'd learned the lesson without me teaching it explicitly. Change that comes from internal growth always lasts longer than change forced by external pressure. As June approached and our trip neared, I felt excited rather than anxious. This time the vacation would be built on a solid foundation of mutual respect, clear boundaries, and genuine appreciation. We'd all be different people than we were last summer. Better people, I hoped. More honest people, certainly. And that fundamental difference would make all the difference in the world. The second Malibu trip in mid-June was everything the first should have been. Jessica and David had chosen a stunning property with incredible views and plenty of space. From the moment we arrived, the atmosphere was relaxed and joyful. Jessica didn't hover nervously. I didn't watch for signs of disrespect. We simply enjoyed each other's company, swimming and cooking and playing with the kids without underlying tension. One evening, as we sat on the deck watching another spectacular sunset, Tyler asked innocently, "Grandma, do you remember last year when we came to a beach house and everyone was acting really weird?" The adults exchanged glances, and Emma added, "Yeah, everyone was being quiet and strange. This year is way better. David looked at me, unsure how to answer, but I smiled at my perceptive grandchildren. Last year, the grown-ups had some important things we needed to work through, and it made things uncomfortable for a while. But we talked about them, we figured things out, and that's why this year feels so much better. Tyler seemed satisfied and went back to watching pelicans. Emma leaned against me, her hair smelling of salt and sunscreen. I like this year better, she announced with simple clarity. Everyone's actually happy instead of pretending, out of the mouths of babes. Later that night, after the kids were asleep, the three of us adults sat around the outdoor fire pit with wine and comfortable silence. Jessica spoke first, her voice quiet but clear. Thank you both for giving me another chance, for not giving up on me. I know I didn't deserve it after last year. David put his arm around his wife. We're family. Family works through hard things. I raised my glass toward the stars, to second chances and hard conversations, to the courage to change and the grace to accept change, to family built on honesty rather than obligation. We clinked glasses, and the sound echoed across the deck, mixing beautifully with the eternal rhythm of waves. It was a moment of hard-earned peace, of joy that came through pain, of connection forged through the courage to set boundaries and the grace to respect them. This was what family could be when everyone committed to growth. The final morning of our second Malibu trip, I woke early and took my coffee out to watch the sunrise paint the ocean in shades of pink and gold. I thought about where I'd been exactly 1 year ago, standing on a different deck, overhearing words that shattered illusions and forced me to confront painful truths. That moment had been one of the most painful of my life, but it had also been absolutely necessary. If I'd never heard Jessica's call, if I'd never stood up for myself, if I'd just continued being the endlessly accommodating mother-in-law, I would have slowly eroded into resentment. My grandchildren would have learned terrible lessons about self-sacrifice and allowing disrespect. Instead, they'd witnessed adults having conflict and working through it honestly. They'd seen that boundaries could coexist with love. They'd learned that respect was non-negotiable, even in family relationships. These were lessons that would serve them well throughout their lives. Jessica came out to join me with her own coffee, and we sat in comfortable silence, both watching the sun climb higher. I've been thinking, Jessica said finally, about last year and how differently things could have gone. If you'd just quietly moved to the back room, if you'd swallowed your hurt and pretended everything was fine, where would we be now? I considered carefully. We'd probably be here having coffee. But you'd still resent me, I'd still feel diminished, and we'd both be playing roles. The house would be beautiful, the vacation would look perfect in photos, but it would be hollow. Jessica nodded slowly. Exactly. So as painful as that confrontation was, as humiliating as it felt, it was the best thing that could have happened to us. We sat there as the sun fully emerged, talking about the year that had passed and the changes we'd both undergone. As I watched Jessica's face light up, discussing her plans and dreams, I felt grateful once again for that awful moment when I'd overheard her phone call. Sometimes the worst moments crack us open so real light can finally get in. Our final breakfast was relaxed and bittersweet. No one wanted to leave this beautiful place where we'd created such good memories. But we all had responsibilities calling us back to real life. As we packed up the cars, Tyler came to me carrying a perfect sand dollar. Grandma, I want you to have this one. It's the prettiest one I found all week. I took the delicate shell, feeling tears prick my eyes. Thank you, sweetheart. I'll treasure it always. Emma added her own gift, a piece of smooth sea glass. This one is for you too, Grandma, because it's strong like you. I hugged both my precious grandchildren, overwhelmed by their uncomplicated love. David came over and wrapped his arms around all three of us. Thanks for being you, Mom. Thanks for not giving up on us. Jessica took a photo of us all tangled together, and later she texted it to me with a simple caption, "Real family, earned, not assumed." The drive home was contemplative, my car full of sandy toys and precious shells, my heart full of gratitude and hope for everything we'd become.